Hello everyone and welcome to episode 6 of The Best You, a coaching podcast. It's Gary here again, and I'd like to start like I always do by thanking you very, very much for joining me for this episode. I hope you're all doing great and investing in whatever work you've committed to get closer to the best version of you. As we close in on the end of 2023, it does give us all a bit of a chance to take a wee bit of a pause, take some stock of what happened in the year, and if you're so inclined, measure the delta between where you thought you were going to be versus actually what happened and where you ended up for the year. Are you ahead? Are you behind? Are you dead on track to meet your personal and or professional goals? Do you know how and why you got to where you got to, and how much does it all make sense and matter to you now that you have the information that you have? These are the reflections and ponderings that many of us are going to have at this time of year. And while I most certainly don't have all the answers to life's journey, I would like to offer up that you are exactly where you're supposed to be right now, for good or for bad. Your life journey has brought you right up to this moment, and this is where you're supposed to be. Trust me on that one, please. If you use what you can and need from the past, if you discard the noise and think only of what happens from this point forward, you'll experience clarity and hopefully a revitalised purpose to move you closer to where you want to be. And that is exactly where you are supposed to be, the best you. You see what I did? See what I did there? Yeah. So what to expect in this episode? We're going to do a little bit of a revisit, just a brief revisit of the communication topic that I did cover in episode 5, with a wee bit of a twist, as I finally did get finished John Maxwell's book, The 16 Undeniable Laws of Communication, and I'd like to share what I learned through reading this and how also it relates to the communication information that I previously shared on the previous pod and a previous blog as well. I'll also walk and talk through the highlights of blog number 7, where I discussed goal setting. But before all that, I'll sprinkle a wee bit of my own personal journey and how things are shaping up in my first month since my departure from corporate land into entrepreneur land, or ultrapreneur, as my sister Debbie called it one time after mishearing me in a busy restaurant at the dinner table, and she's like, "What's an ultrapreneur?" And I said, "Oh, that's me. It's like a mega entrepreneur." And she believed it for a wee bit until I couldn't contain my laughter anymore. So entrepreneur, ultrapreneur, I think they're both kinda the same thing. So what have I been up to since we last chatted? Well, November the 1st was my first day as an ultrapreneur. Let's just use that word for the rest of this pod, shall we? And since then I've been working on my reading, my writing, the blogging, of course, and this podcast as well. As I mentioned and promised before, these will be a wee bit more regular than they proved to be in 2023 as we move forward. So that's hopefully going to be a good thing and something that will keep you going. And a key part of my everyday service or my everyday life is to coach, and that's absolutely going to continue whatever path my journey takes me on from this point forward. Coaching will absolutely be at the foundation of this. Honestly, it's truly my fuel that keeps me going, and it absolutely enlightens me, it energizes me. I just love that I get the opportunity to do this with the clients that I'm able to serve, and long may that continue. I also created my own mastermind group. This is something that's been on my mind for quite some time, and I've got a chance now to dedicate some time to figuring out actually what it is, what we're hoping to get from that, and what it looks like. So I have created that with a couple of very trusted and respected friends here in Calgary, Canada, which is where I live. And when I say respected by me, and we've laid the foundations, we've sorted out the purpose and the intent of the mastermind, the frequency, the duration, locations and such, and we will make a formal start on that in mid to late January. So I'm not so sure how much of that I will share as we go forward, but I think I mentioned that just now because it did take a wee while to get set up, and it's something that's near and dear to my heart, that the ability to to learn from other people, especially people that you like, there's people that you trust, people that you respect. And, groupthink is going to be something that's absolutely at the epicenter of everything that I do going forward. And actually, John Maxwell talks about that, and I'll get to that in a wee bit here. And I've also had some conversations with associates from the business community across the world, actually, to pick their brains on essentially on do's and don'ts when starting a business, which is essentially what I'm doing right now. And, kind of get to that point. What would you have done differently, based on what you know now, if you were to go back and give yourself some advice sort of thing. So that's been very, very helpful, and I'm so grateful for people giving up their time for me to do this kind of thing. And do you know what else I did? I actually started my first ever journal. Well, it's kind of like a journal. It's my version of a journal. I've cheated a wee bit from my project management days, 30 years-ish in the industry, old habits die hard and all that. But what I do now is I complete, and I have actually done this every single week, I complete a weekly journal with a review of what happened that week, what didn't happen, and what I'm doing next week. So yes, it sounds like a status report, and that's kind of the spirit of what it is, but it's a start. And I'm sure that avid journalers who listen to this will be thoroughly disappointed, but give me a wee bit of credit and a wee bit of encouragement for at least making a start. And I have to say, it's been quite therapeutic to be able to look back, primarily to see what I've been working on, to see some themes and get a feel and flavour. It's more task based right now, if you know what I mean, but going forward, hopefully it'll kind of embellish itself a wee bit and get a bit more meaningful, a bit more in-depth, and a bit more fruitful as well. But as I say, a bit of a start. I have started some training with Project Management Institute to become an authorised training partner, and that's through the university that I work at here, Mount Royal University in Calgary. And this is basically just to ensure that I can keep on my educational hat and serve the project management community that served me so well in my life and career thus far. And I also attended a mastermind immersive weekend. If you've listened to previous pods, you'll know that I'm part of the Launchpad Accelerator course that I'm doing through Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi. And I have to say, this has been so insightful, and the support continues to continue that you do the work through weekly coaching sessions, and there's online communities and such as well. It's really opening my eyes, quite honestly, to the amount, type, style and level of detail of work that has to go into setting up a business offering and setting it up correctly, committing to it, moving things forward with purpose, intention and love. So it's good. It's a good opportunity to get myself organised and see what's involved and immerse myself in that and get myself to a point where I'm more organised and more purposeful about what I'm spending my time on and when. And that's been a tremendous learning experience. And I attended an event, and I wasn't going to mention this, but I did want to just talk about attending an event there a couple of weeks back called Alberta Catalyzer, which is a support organisation for startup entrepreneurs, not entrepreneurs like me, but entrepreneurs, to provide them with some tools, coaching, contacts and general support, which culminates, I believe it's a 6 or an 8 week programme, and it culminates in an opportunity to do a 3-minute pitch to an audience, and the audience consists of the public and some investors as well. And the reason I mention that is that it's amazing when you live in the bubble that you live in, whether it's a massive bubble or a very small bubble, you're still living in a bubble of sorts. And then when you kind of step outside of that bubble and you start to see other communities, other things that exist that you had no idea about, that's exactly the experience I had there a couple of weeks back. It was tremendous. The energy was great. The 8 or 9 different entrepreneurs that were there were very entertaining and very educational, and just to see the variety of things that are going on my doorstep that I have absolutely no idea about. It was inspiring, I guess, is really the reason that I'm mentioning this, and inspiring me to just make sure that I'm keeping my eyes open for further opportunities to be able to get myself out and about and learn new things from new communities and such as well. And I've been working on just some admin stuff, creating a formal quote, a proposal documentation, finalising and finessing that with some of the key members of my community just now to get some feedback to make sure it's appropriate for who I am, where I am, and what I'm trying to do in terms of service to the community as well. So it's been an absolutely busy time, I have to say, and I've absolutely loved the opportunity to take the time to really commit to who and what I want to be, quite frankly, and I can only see good things coming from this as we go forward as well. In terms of books on the go, I mentioned that I've finally finished the 16 Undeniable Laws of Communication by John Maxwell, which I'll get to here in a wee second, and now I'm reading, I think I mentioned on a previous pod that I'm going to try and go through some previous classics, some books that I've wanted to read or certainly heard about, for over the years and over my journey as well. So right now I'm about halfway through Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, and I am loving it, absolutely loving it. It's about 85-ish or so years old right now, and the information that he's shared thus far is as relevant today as it was when he wrote it. Despite us being an evolving species, there's only so much evolvement that us humans seem to appear to do, and the sage guidance and advice that he provides is reassuring, entertaining, and it gives me food for thought about how much we truly are evolved or not, as is the case sometimes as well. Okay, so on to a brief summary of. So this is a wee bit of an extension to what I shared in the last. In the blog, I think blog number 5, which was 5 tips to communicate better, and pod number 5 as well. And I did promise this, that I would just kind of layer this on and then see if there was any major differences. So the book itself, the 16 Undeniable Laws of Communication, are broken into 5 sections: who says it, what is said, how it's said, when it's said, and why it's said. And then each of the 16 laws are broken up into these 5 sections. So under the who says it, there is the law of credibility. Your most effective message is the one you live. And what they're really talking about there, what John is really talking about there, is authenticity, creating credibility, understanding why people listen to you and how that you can make connections based on living an authentic life as well. So that's the law of credibility. The second one is the law of observation, and he offers up that good communicators learn from great communicators. So essentially, better people make you better. So always looking for learnings from people who are better than you. So in this regard, of course, it's communicators. So communicators that are doing things in the communication space that is better than you, and just seeking out learnings from that as well. So that's the law of observation. And the third one and final one in the who says it is the law of conviction. And the stronger you believe it, the more people feel it, is the kind of moniker that he has there. Personal, people, and purpose conviction is what he explains, and exploring what you truly believe in is the key to being more convicting in the way that you go about your communication. And there's a quote there that he has: a different world cannot be built by indifferent people. There's tons of quotes through the book which I love, and I'll quote a few of them here as well. But that's the law of conviction. He then moves on to what, and that is what is said. And law number 4 is the law of preparation. You cannot deliver what you have not developed, is what he says. And really, ultimately here, what he's saying is preparation, preparation, preparation. There's a quote by Malcolm Gladwell that he has in there: practice isn't the thing you do once you're good, it's the thing you do that makes you good. And, in order to be prepared, I'm sure we've all been to events where you can tell whether the people have put the time in to prepare, and it's very palatable and noticeable, both in a good way and a bad way. And a bad way would obviously be a wee bit more painful, a little bit more time consuming, and probably frustrating if you see that they haven't put in the preparation to deliver what they're trying to deliver to you as well. Number 5 is the law of collaboration. Some of your best thinking will be done with others, is what he says. And collaboration has a multiplying effect. So not just for you, but for the people you're collaborating with as well. And there's a quote here from Woodrow Wilson where he says we should not only use all the brains we have, but all the brains we can borrow as well. So communication, and great communication, doesn't have to be in isolation, shouldn't be in isolation. There should be an element of collaboration in there as well. Law number 6 is the law of content. When you have something worth saying, people start listening. So it kind of explains at the beginning of this chapter, every message is a puzzle. And if you can solve it, then your content will keep getting better. And if you keep getting better, your content will keep getting better, and you will never ever run out of content if you're continually growing as well. So the content is a key part of this as well. Under the how it is said, this is where the majority of the laws came in here, just in terms of literal numbers. This is number 7 to 12 in this, and the first one of that is number 7, which is the law of connecting. Communicators know it's all about others, and he emphasizes that this is the most important idea in the book, and he talks about caring. You really have to care about other people to get your message across appropriately for there. And he mentions in here, which I thought was really interesting, 4 truths, and I'm going to kind of just read them out here. It's not about you, it's about others, so get over yourself. I love that. Number 2, immature people see things only from their perspective. Number 3, mature people see things from the perspective of others. Number 4, immature people are seldom successful and they're never significant. Quite abrupt words there, harsh words maybe at some point, I'm not sure, but certainly very, very definitive in how he feels about that. But in terms of connecting with your audience, just bear in mind that it's not about you at all. It's about who you're communicating to and with as well. Number 8 is the law of leverage. Good communicators lead with their strengths and use them often. He talks here again about authenticity and leveraging your best. So understanding first, then leveraging your best strengths and skills to help others succeed. There. Law number 9 is the law of anticipation. When you can't wait to see it, they can't wait to hear it. So he talks here about anticipation and the different perspectives that are in play for effective communication, and how you build your story, how you build up to your crescendo point, to the main emphasis point that you're trying to make with your communication as well, building it in as part of your communication journey to have people anticipate what that looks like as well. Quite interesting chapter, that one. Number 10 is the law of simplicity. Communicators take something complicated and make it simple. Just keeping it simple, keeping it natural and easy to understand with clarity, brevity and focus is really where he emphasizes things here. And just stop trying to impress and start trying to help your audience. So back to the it's not about you, get over yourself sort of thing. If you approach every communication with the intent to help your audience, then you'll be in a good spot here in terms of simplicity, and get to the point before your audience start asking what's the point. So that would be part of the kind of the simpleness and the brevity and the clarity as well. So yeah, interesting stuff. Number 11 is the law of visual expression. Show and tell is better than just tell. He explains in here that the majority of people are visual learners, and if you're in person communicating, or even if you're on camera, literally on camera on any of the video communication platforms, consider your body movement and the gestures and the facial expressions that you have. And when you're providing written material or supplementary material to the words and the gestures that you are making, he explains that images are better than written words. People will remember the images. They won't remember a slide that comes up that has a whole bunch of words, even if it's kind of keywords or power words or anything like that. So going on the visual part of that is the key part of the visual expression law. Number 12 is the law of storytelling. I mentioned that just briefly earlier. People see their own lives in stories. And he talks about storytellers' characteristics and all the traits that make very good storytellers compelling. And he talks about enthusiasm, he talks about animation, he talks about responsiveness to the audience, creativity in crafting the message, rolling with the punches, things like that is what he talks about, and connection with the audience through the story is key. And he also talks about what is a story, and I really enjoyed this part because he says that every story has a hero, has a goal, has a conflict, and a resolution. So I'm going to read that again. Every story has a hero, a goal, a conflict, and a resolution. So if you think about that as you're crafting a story, as you're trying to get a communication across, and think about who the hero is, think about what the overall goal is of the story, and think about the conflict that happens and the resolution that is gotten to make the hero that he or she is as well. Quite compelling. That was a very entertaining chapter, that one. We then move on to the when it is said, and we're on to number 13 here, which is the law of the thermostat. Communicators read the room and change the temperature. I loved this chapter. I just loved the analogy. It really spoke to me. And he just explains here in the most simplistic terms, thermometers measure the room temperature and thermostats can read the room and change the temperature. So what one do you want to be? Do you want to be a thermometer who's just going to measure and read the room temperature? Or are you going to do something that will actually change it as well? And they, of course, the thermostats, their communication is able to connect more because you're going to adjust the temperature to the needs of the room that you're trying to serve at that particular time. As I say, I love that analogy. That's something that's certainly going to stick with me for quite some time as we go forward. And then law number 14 under the when it is said is the law of the change up. And sameness is the death of communication, is what he says. And what he's really talking about here is providing variety, changing up your communication, making sure you practice the change ups, the power of the pause, an effective pause during your communication, short pauses, long pauses, interaction with the audience, and just making sure, that kind of lends itself back to being the thermostat and making sure that you can change things up, depending on where you're at, even if it's a talk or a communication that you have done multiple times to multiple different audiences, the ability to be able to read the room, to understand what's landing, and to make adjustments to get yourself to edutain. I like to say that I'm an edutainer, and that's the sort of thing that they're kind of talking about here to change things up and get things organised in that respect as well. And then the final section is the why it is said as well. So law number 15 is the law of adding value. People may forget what you say, but they never forget how you made or make them feel. Make them feel. And it kind of goes back to what he said at the beginning, living good values, adding value to others. And a quote here from Albert Einstein is provided in this chapter. It says, "Gentlemen, try not to become men of success, rather become men of value." Make sure that every single communication that you're doing is going to add value to others is the key part of this particular chapter. And the 16th and final law that he includes in the book is the law of results. The greatest success in communication is action. So he talks here about what distinguishes powerful leaders and communicators from other more ordinary speakers. The way that I typically say this is what separates the average to the good to the great. And he says that they mobilise people. Good communicators move their listeners to action. The greatest success in communication is action. And Benjamin Franklin said, "Well done is better than well said." I love that quote as well. And, ultimately, really, what's the point of communicating to anyone if you don't want them to take action of some description? Now, you can build that into your message, you can build that into your story, you can build that into your delivery as well. But, the whole point is for people to do something that they weren't doing before. And being clear about that and making sure that your communication hits the mark is the absolute way to go on that. So in my blog about communication, in the blog and the pod that we did about communication, I focused more on the mechanics of what the communication is and discussed, what it is, how it can go wrong, and provided some guidance and tips there on how to make it more meaningful, impactful, and consistent. What John Maxwell explained in his Laws book is is in the kind of who, what, when, and how, when, and why is, is a different approach. And I love this approach as it then allowed the laws to fit naturally within the respective buckets. It's such a cool way, such a predictive way to write as well. I like that. And like the hierarchy of real laws from real life, they go from more general laws like general statute to broken down a wee bit more granular to regulations, then to bylaws, then to industry rules and organisation rules and practices and the like. And what John Maxwell did was navigate at a somewhat higher conceptual level that allows the reader to basically interpret and adopt what they can for the betterment of their communication performance and the impact of the communication as I go forward. And I kind of like to think that he explained the what level, and I dabbled in the why and how levels, so that we can somewhat complement each other. The only real difference between my communication and his communication is that he's sold millions and millions of copies of his book, and I have no idea how many people are actually listening or reading the stuff that I'm putting out as well. But I was glad to see that I didn't completely contradict everything that he said on his stuff. Okay, so on to goal setting. So I wrote the goal setting blog primarily from an organisational perspective, but if you put the lens of your own life, and you say, for example, your household or your organisation that you're part of, personally or anything like that, the principles will work just as well. So firstly, what I explained was, like, why do we set goals? And I talk about planning with intention, aligning our actions across the organisation, and progressing towards overall vision and strategic objectives. And then I talk about, considering why you set goals in your life. And it's one of these things, I think we all do it to a certain degree, some with more intention than others. And it's that probably reflects on the success that people have or not. And then we talk about, what appropriate goal setting can be. It can definitely be a time of self-reflection. It can be a place where we can evaluate our achievements, our skill sets, our talents in a specific area to this point. It gives us an opportunity to pause and learn from our experiences, and that could be through the self-reflection part as well. And then it aligns on how we set our sights on what we would like to do, our shared intent for the future there. And I did mention in the blog that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. I heard that saying, actually it's probably only about, 15 years ago or something like that, and it really stuck with me because it's so true. And really what I'm saying here is that there has to be intention in your goal setting, not like a good idea or a warm and fuzzy thought, and most certainly not wishful thinking. It has to be appropriate. The appropriate goal setting has to be about taking intentional action and aligning your efforts towards a common purpose. Now, the common part of the purpose might not be common at the time of ideating the goal, but it will have to be built into the communication and alignment part of the goal setting journey to avoid any blockers or resistance that can, and most likely will, arise if you decide someone else's goals for them, or their role within an organisation is required for you to be aligned with your goals and to actually deliver the goals as well. And reality really genuinely does play a key part in goal setting, and using information that you already have from history or prior experience or any subject matter expert help and things like that can help. And as I said, sprinkle reality on the goal to avoid you descending into fantasy land and all the other negative connotations and consequences that can arise from that. But it is a balance. Playing it completely safe isn't going to serve you either. You have to figure out how best to move the needle, so to speak, or push the envelope, as we say in the blog, while still playing within the confines of genuine practical reality. A common or collective understanding of what you intend to achieve and where you'll be investing your resources is absolutely key to creating the appropriate communications channels for the information flow that will help establish support and hopefully trust in your ability to deliver on the goals, and how that contributes to the greater good for you and for the organisation, of course, which is the whole point of doing it. So So when you, I then went on to talk about when the goal setting should take place, and I did mention that there's no right or wrong answer as to when it should take place. It has to work for you, for the organisation that you're performing the goals for. There has to be enough time apportioned to and for it, and it could be based on organisational requirements. There could be just a time of the year where an organisation is performing their goal setting, and you have a time, say for example November and December, you put things into play, and then you get organised for January or so. And it could be just, obviously it could be emergent as well. There could be circumstances that happen where you have to react and reframe a goal, remove a goal, create a net new goal, or something like that as well. So not one size fits all in terms of when it should take place, but if you can have at least an intention for a specific time period to give yourself an opportunity to essentially kind of close one chapter, which might be a fiscal year, and prepare for the next chapter as well, would be key there. And understanding that it can genuinely be done at any time. It's never too late to start. So please, please, please don't use time or lack of time or the timing derail you from setting, affirming, or resetting your goals. Think about it this way. Like, what's the alternative? Consider for a second or two, if you don't take the time to plan in and around your goal setting, regardless of the timing, or regardless of when the need arises, whether it's proactive or reactive, how do you think that's going to work out for you? Remember, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And most things that will go awry in your life will be things that are attached to probably not a whole bunch of intention or investment in planning as you go forward as well. Who should be involved in it? This really comes under the realm of appropriate stakeholder engagement for me. Identifying, managing, and measuring your progress and process is key for any stakeholder interaction within an organisation. And it's key to know that you absolutely don't need everyone involved at every stage of the planning process. The blog talks about going from general or strategic to specific or tactical levels of detail, which should help establish who needs to be actively involved at what stage. It's unlikely, I think, that you're going to have 50 people all at the starting line, but you might engage that number or upwards of that number through the entire course of the goal setting, depending on how large, complex, or cross-functional the goal is. And you also have to factor in a few pertinent considerations, such as organisational culture, the privacy or sensitivity of the goal, political influences within and outside the organisation, skill sets that are available, communications protocol that must be adhered to, the types and styles of stakeholders that you're going to engage with, influence stakeholders, impact stakeholders, interest stakeholders, any succession planning considerations, things like that. And then once you take a holistic view of what's going to add the most appropriate immediate, short, medium, and long-term benefit, will absolutely serve you into building into the goal setting process and who should be involved in that. And then I kind of finalise that with a little bit of a view of the process of goal setting, and I talk about 6 key elements. The first one being identification of the goals and objectives and understanding what it is, who it's for, and why it's important. Then talking about SMART goals, going back to basics and looking at the goals from a lens of how specific is it, how measurable, achievable, relevant or realistic, and time bound as well. And then breaking the goals into actionable steps, essentially decomposing them into tasks that are smaller, more easy to manage, to track, and to determine whether they're going to be successful or not. Number 4 is creating a delivery timeline or schedule and making it realistic and considering other time consumers that will be in play for the goal delivery. People may have day jobs. They don't exist just to deliver on your goals. So you have to be able to sprinkle that type of reality in there as well. And number 5 is establishing accountability and tracking criteria. And essentially what I'm saying here is what gets measured gets done. You need to measure how the goal delivery is progressing and have measurement criteria built in that will help you understand the overall health of that goal. Are you going to actually meet the targets that have been set? If not, why not? What are you going to do with that information? And that really lends itself to the last point, which is communication. And you have to know at the outset what you're going to communicate, to whom, when, using what media, and what they would be expected to do with the information when they receive it. And that should be an absolute constant from the beginning through to the end, and even post delivery of the goals as well. Communication, if you haven't got that from the last couple of blogs and pod, then I hope you have that locked in now, that communication should be an absolute constant in whatever you're doing in your life as well. So you might, in your organisation, you might approach goal setting differently, and if you do, I would absolutely love to hear from you. I did extend an invite in the blog to get in touch with me directly if you have followed or follow currently another process that has worked well for you in your organisation. I suspect the elements are going to be somewhat similar to what was included in the descriptor that I've provided thus far. And if so, a degree of success and learning will have been attained along the way. But if you've ever been responsible for goal setting, hopefully, or are going to be in the future, hopefully what I've shared thus far would be a good starter for you to at least begin your planning efforts and just go through the kind of 6 elements that I listed there. But yeah, if you have used something else and you would be willing to share that type of style of information for me, just purely from a information sharing Informating is information sharing, just abbreviated for the interests of time. But I would love to hear from you. You can go onto my website, garygillan.com, and contact me there, and we can have a conversation from there. Okie dokie, folks, that is it for this episode. I hope that the Best You coaching podcast is a valuable use of your time, and that you will join me for more as we move forward together. And if you did find it valuable, please do share it with others, as I'd love to continue to build our community of like-minded folks from literally around the globe to help each other continue to work towards being the absolute best that they can be. And don't forget to take a peek at garygillan.com for more content, more information, including the archives of the previous blogs and pods thus far. So until next time, please do take care of yourself, and all the very best to you in your journey, and I will talk to you soon. Cheerio for now.